In this video, we're going to look at what the controller is specifically, and in the videos afterwards, we'll get deep into the actual code of Ruby on Rails controllers. So from earlier introduction videos when we talked about Model View Controller, the controller was the code that took care of interacting with the web browser requests that come in. And then the controller will talk to the model and get information back, and then generate the view based on what that model was coming back with in order to generate the view, and then the view gets pushed out to your browser. The role of the controller is kind of like a traffic cop in the sense that it's dealing with the model and the view and controlling the interaction between them and the user. Now, don't make the mistake of putting a whole bunch of code into the controller. Most of your code that deals with your model should be in your model code. And as we get into more of the controllers and the views, you'll see how much stuff that we should be putting into the models as opposed into the controller. So let's exit out of here and jump over to our controller. Now this is our comment controller that was generated by a scaffolding in earlier videos, and it's pretty typical controller that you're going to see in a typical CRUD application, and CRUD being the create, read, update, and destroy cycle. So the first thing we have is the index, which is just the default page that gets generated, and that's list. A list of our comments gets generated. Then we have the list itself, and you could actually call this and it probably would work fine. Then you have your show. This corresponds to a view over here. If we go and take a look, there's a view method called show. Then we have a new that corresponds to a view over here. And then if we go and look at that new, you're going to see that there's a form in here, and in later videos in the view section we talk about forms more in depth about what's actually going on in here. But the main thing to notice is that the action of the form is create. This corresponds back to the controller that controls these views, the comment, and this create function right here, or create method. The other thing to note is that this form has an embedded form inside of it, which we'll cover in the view videos more in depth. This series is more about the controllers here. So what this method does is this actually creates a new comment once a person has entered it. So this new view actually generates a form that we enter information in, and then we click the button that says create, which is right here. That's what the button is called. And then Rails will call the create method, which is right here. And in this method, we get a new comment generated from the parameters that that form were sent in with right here. So let's jump back here, and you'll see there's a partial render for this form. Let's go look at that one. And in here, you're going to see comment right here for these field names. So this comment directly refers to this parameter comment. So when this form gets sent back to our web server and eventually to Rails, it's going to be carrying this form information in here, and we access that via params, then the brackets, and then we use a symbol of comment because that's what we called that. And Rails gives us for nothing, since that corresponds, if we look here, these correspond comment, created at, updated at, directly to what our table structure is. If we go look at our table structure for comment, we have comment, created at, updated at. We don't have to worry about these. Rails takes care of those once we get them set up. So by doing this, we get a new comment that's already populated with all the information from that form. Then the next thing that occurs here is that we have this save. And the if looks at this method, and every Ruby method returns something, and if this happens, you get true back, and then we get a flash, which is the little green comment that you'll see pop up saying this save was successful, and then it redirects back to the list action. So we get the list re-rendered again. If our save fails, it goes back to the new. So here we have some other methods in this controller. We have an edit where we can actually edit it, and we get a local, or excuse me, an instant variable set up named for comment, so it's @comment, by going and looking at what parameter was passed in from our, when we click on list, this ID was set to a particular comment, ID of a particular comment. We have an update that is similar to our create in that it goes out, except instead of creating a new comment, it goes and finds that comment and then updates the attributes of that particular comment with what came from the form. And finally down here we have our destroy or our delete. So this is a pretty typical controller. There's not model specific code in here, and there's really not view specific code in here. That's the way it should be. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we just reviewed here real quick. Here's our list. So if we put in list, we'll get the same thing. Here is our show where we see the particular comment. And if you look in our URL, we have 3 was passed in to us. And we can go back here. We have the edit and we have the destroy. And if you look down on the bottom here, look down in this area while I hover over, you can see the IDs that come through and what method gets called in that URL. So we have edit and then the ID. And that's how you can actually deal with a particular what is being clicked on there. And if I hover over this, you'll see that it's comment/new. It's calling the new method in our controller.